The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines. Available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world on TV, radio and online. I bid you all good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in all the world's time zones. This is The More Show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Rosalind Byrne, PhD. As a university professor, Rosalind writes and teaches about engineering and technology in society and the ethical implications of technological development, often using science fiction material in her classes. In her personal life, she is known as the Horse Whisperer, offering communication between horses and their owners. She is the author of Nanotalk, Conversations with Scientists and Engineers about Ethics, and her latest book, When the Horse Whispers. Rosalind Byrne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be with you.
It's great to have you on. And am I right to say that you're based in Virginia?
I am. Virginia in the U.S.
Yeah, okay. Now, your book, When the Horse Whispers, or When the Horse Whisper, now this isn't your first book, is it?
No, it's my third.
Yeah.
And I have another coming out in the spring, so I do a lot of writing.
Yeah. Now, your journey is a bit of a strange one, really, because obviously you're a doctor now, and you're teaching, but your gift, in a sense, started when you was about 2 years old, and you was having sort of communication with people on the other side, if you want to call it that. And how did your parents react to this?
Oh, I was so fortunate. My mother tells stories about this, and she did call a psychologist at the time, which was back in the late 50s, to date myself. And the first psychologist she talked to said, "Oh, your daughter is probably quite ill. She'll need very serious help." And my mother intuitively felt that that was just wrong. So she talked to someone else, also actually a psychiatrist, who said, "I think you should read Edgar Cayce, and maybe that will help you." And back then there weren't too many things published that would be helpful about these kinds of experiences. So I'm really grateful to my mother for looking into it more deeply until she felt like she was getting the right answer. That way, she could understand her child.
Yes, because most parents would ignore it in a sense, and we are a product of our upbringing in a sense until we can let go of anything that doesn't serve us now. But she really did help you in that way. Now, were your parents quite spiritual, or?
I would say that my parents were. They were both raised by very religious people, church people, and they rejected the traditional upbringing, the traditional teachings in church. My mother did a lot of reading. After she discovered Edgar Cayce, she continued to read. My father, I would say that he is spiritual in a way that doesn't associate with a particular teaching. I think he calls himself a pantheist.
Okay. Now, Edgar Cayce, I mean, his work is just infamous in a sense, and, very big in the States and other countries as well. Obviously, have you studied his work as well since?
Oh, sure. And I've been to the ARE, the institute there. I've done lots of reading since I was a young adult because, in addition to having these experiences of communicating with people on the other side, as we say, I was having some out of body experiences that I didn't understand. So I started reading Robert Monroe when I was a college student. I've read, Seth Speaks as a college student, probably lots. Um, and then I began to find my own practices to help sort of ground my understanding and my experiences more in my body.
Yeah.
So, hmm
Yeah, I mean, you went down the path of the sort of intellectual pursuit in a sense,
did.
which there's nothing wrong with that. So, so have I. But you still couldn't get away from this path, where which is taking you now. You still couldn't get away from this spiritual side in a sense.
You're pretty perceptive about that. I feel that I have been very much in my head since I was maybe started off in college. I just really wanted to do very well in school and have a really deep, rich intellectual life. But you're right. I guess we are who we are. And it caught me by surprise because I haven't had experiences like this in quite a while. Maybe it's been a while. It did catch me by surprise that it was back in the way that it has come back with hearing other species.
I mean, do you speak your truth to other people if they ask you, or?
Oh, I'm really glad you're asking this question because I'm in a fairly traditional university setting. Um, I've had to ask myself how much I'm willing to speak out. And I'll tell you a personal story. Um, well, for a while, I was the headmistress of an independent school, what I think in England you might call public schools, and we call them private here, if I'm not correct.
That's right.
Mm. And a lot of what I had to do, because the school was struggling, really struggling, and may had to have closed, a lot of what I had to do was to get guidance and support from sort of beyond the material realm. I did a lot of sitting in meditation and asking and connecting with what I consider to be beings of light to get help, and it really helped enormously. And I did sometimes share things, but people would be a little bit frightened. Some of my staff would be a little bit frightened because of the way things were coming to me and the help that was coming exactly when I needed it. So I had to ask, when is it appropriate and when is it not appropriate to share some of the understandings and experiences that I have. And then what happened, Kevin, is about 4 years ago, we discovered that I had a really large, enlarged thyroid, so much so that it was choking me. It was making it hard to breathe. And when I went into surgery, I went into the awareness of my thyroid and asked for understanding. And what I was told was that that half had to come off and that it grew in part because it was holding all the things I didn't speak out loud. And that I still had a chance because I had the other side. I still had a chance to speak my truth, but that I was basically by holding back, sort of choking back my truth, it was just growing inside of this organ as an illness. And so that's an example of where not all of our illnesses have psychological roots, I don't think. But in this case, I think it was a lesson that I have no choice. I have to speak.
Mm.
And when the horse communication started and I put a prayer out, what is this? What am I supposed to do? I got an immediate answer in a sign posted on an airport wall that said, "Be the voice for those who cannot speak." And then I knew I am being asked to speak. And so I'm not hesitated.
No.
In fact, I gave a TED talk the other day on my university grounds, and I'm out now. My colleagues, my students, they know.
Okay. Wow. And what does that make you feel like?
Free.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I bet it does. I mean, it's a great thing to be able to do. But you know, at the same time, I'm guessing that you don't, you know, you're not on a mission to preach or to change it. You know, it's as and when the time arises, you will tell your truth, and that's where you're coming from.
Yeah,
Uh,
no preaching from me. We all have to learn in our own way and time.
yes, that's right,
Mhm.
that's right. And so just very quickly then, what is your daytime job as well?
Yeah, I'm a professor at a university,
Right.
and I teach in an engineering school. I am not an engineer. I'm trained formally. My doctoral degree is in religious studies with a focus on ethics. So what I do is I ask engineers to think about their ethical responsibilities as engineers, and we look at the future. We look at how engineering design impacts the lives of people and society, sometimes not for such good, sometimes for wonderful good. So we watch science fiction movies and we talk about theories of ethics, and we ask them to think really deeply about what it means to have the ability in their hands to reshape our world. That's what I do with my daytime, and that's what I write about, and what a couple of my books are about. Um, and the students are actually the ones who discovered through the web that I've been listening to horses, and so now I'm also talking about our relationship with nature.
No, that's beautiful. I really do. You know, that must be a really interesting course to teach, and it's very different as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never thought you could bring that side to engineering, but I guess, you know, it's a very important side as well.
Mm.
Well, moving on to your fascinating work, as we should do, um, why do you think that you have this gift to be able to speak to horses?
Well, that was a question I had to ask myself. Um, I feel that when we get gifts, we're supposed to use them, yes?
Right.
And so I'm still allowing this process to unfold and guide me. Um, but when I do speak about this to people, it seems to affect them very deeply. Um, and I think a lot of people have had experiences where they feel that they're understanding animals and they haven't known what to do with it or how to talk about it. So it could be, Kevin, that one thing I'm supposed to do is make it so other people feel safe to talk about what they're experiencing. I also believe that things are shifting and that the boundaries of species are going to be looser and softer, and that many more of us will begin to sense and feel what the natural world, animals, sentient beings out there in the natural world can share with us. I think we need each other. And what I'm learning from listening to horses, I think could be helpful for our evolution and for just our wellness.
Yeah. And sort of going back a bit here, just to sort of recap, the first horse communication you had, I believe it was with Aladdin. Is that right?
Oh, when I was a child.
Yes.
Hmm. I didn't know that that's what was happening because I was young, and at that point, that wasn't very unusual for me to be aware in that way. Aladdin was very important to me because I had had some trauma in my childhood and some sadness. And Aladdin gave me a sense of strength, and he also made me feel very deeply understood. And I do believe that animals do that for people. It's not uncommon.
No, that's
Now, yes. Hmm.
no. Go ahead, please.
Well, when it was time to leave my summer camp experience and to go home and leave that horse behind, I was pretty sad about that. What I believe happened is that Aladdin told me that he would be with me, and I didn't get that. And many, many years later, here we are now. I realize in some ways, maybe in my heart, I was able to take him in, and that he did stay with me. In some ways, I feel like he's part of the reason why all of this is happening. I'm not sure. It's still a bit of a mystery, but that's my thinking at the time.
Okay, okay. And is this through some sort of clairaudience? Claire,
Uh,
how?
Probably,
Yeah.
probably, probably because uh, yeah, well, it's not through the physical ear, but I am hearing. Sometimes I'm seeing, it depends. Sometimes what the horse will do is show me an image. Sometimes I'll hear very specific words, which means that the horse has heard words that they understood and they're using. And sometimes what it is a very deep intuition that I can then translate into very specific meaning. And I have been able to help people who have their own horses in their lives to understand things that are going on with their horses that are really important that they didn't know before. And so clairaudience is probably very much a part of it. I think that there's a little bit more going on here that I've learned, and that is that the heart and the brain are actually in very active and pretty continual communication. And I've been so intellectually oriented, so stuck in my brain, that I think only recently have I been able to become aware of the knowledge that comes from the connection of the heart and the brain. So I think in addition to the clairaudience, what's going on is that the heart-brain connection is more deeply engaged in a way that I've become conscious of. Um, there is a researcher named McCready, I think heart math is something he's behind, I think that's what it's called, who's looked at this, and he says that what happens is that the heart actually is the organ that gives us access to intuitive information that's otherwise not available. So I think what's going on here is that I've allowed the heart to open and to connect with the brain, and I'm aware of information that it's picking up intuitively. So that it's not just clairaudience, but it's something else that we probably need to create a new word to describe.
Well, it's always very difficult to put this kind of work.
Mm.
Sorry, it's always very difficult to put this kind of work into words, in a sense. I mean, we're
Yes,
talking about things here that uh, uh, we will have an understanding of one day, but on this level, there's a sort of veil that seems to be around us, where we've sort of, lost our connection to who we truly are. Um,
yes.
with the horse communications, then, obviously, the horses, are they shocked when they know that you can communicate?
Yes, some of them, yes. One horse in particular is like, I can't believe you understand me. All my life, I've wished I could be understood by people. This means so much to me. He was very emotional. It was as if he was weeping for joy. And then he had so much to say. And other horses just don't believe me, so they hesitate for a long time, and I have to go into a meditative state and really open and really be patient until they begin to sense that it's really happening. A lot of horses are just broken the same way humans are,
Hmm.
and they've lost themselves the same way humans have, in part because of the way we've treated them. But other horses, well, the first time I really heard this going on with the horse named Titan, he's the one that started the conversation, not me. I was the one who was surprised.
Yeah.
So it really varies from horse to horse, but there is a lot of um, sometimes emotion, sometimes anxious to talk once they figure it out. For example, if I'm in a barn and there are 7 or 8 horses, and I'm talking to the first or the second, the others pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I can start to sense that they're now anxious to talk as well.
Okay. Well, we're just going to take a quick break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained. The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined by my guest, Rosalind Byrne, author of the book When the Horses Whisper. Now, Rosalind, just before the break there, obviously we were talking about your communication with the horses and how receptive they are once they've, had the communication. But what is a horse's understanding of life from their
Yeah.
perspective?
Well, that's So there's their understanding of their lives, and then there's their understanding of our lives, which is partly what I'm writing about. And again, just like people, there's a wide variety in the depth of their awareness. So, for example, one horse might have very little to say other than maybe he wants different food or his hooves are bothering him. Whereas another horse might have a lot to say about what they perceive of human beings and who they are as beings themselves. So, for example, the horse Beauty is the most philosophical horse I've ever met, the most wise being in some ways I've met. She talks about how horses, on a soul level, made a commitment to human beings um, way before horses actually incarnated, and that they are here to help us evolve, and we are evolving with them and growing together. Um, Beauty also came to me in a dream after when the Horse's Whisper came out. She came to me in a dream and said, "There's much more. There's much more for us to share with people." And she wanted to talk about humans. And so I went back to hear, and I'm going to actually release a new book next year, her talking about a state that we're in that she says is very dangerous for us, that has to do with our having forgotten how to use and run the feminine and masculine energies of the earth. And she sees us as depleted, energetically depleted in a chronic way, and is talking to me about what that means and what it would look like for us to be healthy again. So there's deep wisdom that's coming through. I'm very grateful for. I'm really happy for opportunities like this with you to be able to talk about it, because I think part of what's happening is that these beings as other species are very aware of us. We've domesticated them. They live with us. They work for us. They used to fight wars for us. I feel like I've lost you, Kevin. Oh, here we are. Sorry.
Yes,
Am I with
yes,
you?
yes, I can hear you. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. The horses know us so very well. They've had centuries, many centuries serving us. And so part of what I'm learning from them is what they see as our struggles and how that they can help us.
Yeah, and I guess, like you say, before they came down to incarnate as a horse, there was an agreement made for the whole reason for them being here. I
Yeah.
guess.
That's
Um,
my understanding. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and well, there's so many questions, and what are their views on life after death?
I don't know that answer. Um, I'll have to ask the next time around one that I think would have thought about it.
Hmm.
I don't know. Um, hmm. We haven't talked about what the human soul is. We've talked about horses and humans evolving together for our mutual awakening and mutual support and growth. But wouldn't that be interesting? I think Beauty is the one that could handle that question and could actually give an interesting answer about who we are after we pass over. That's what you're asking, yes?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to, yeah.
well, I also wonder as well, can other animals communicate with other animals as humans do, or is that a rare thing as well?
Oh, now. You're giving me homework here. Can other animals, well, don't you think so? There is certainly that we know about interspecies communication. So we know, for example, when I say we, science knows, for example, that fungi communicate with trees about the availability of nutrients, so that the mother tree in a forest can know where to direct nutrients through the root system, and it's the fungi that help to get that information across. So we know that that happens in plant life. And why, just think about it. Why would animals not communicate? They would almost have to. If it's all connected the way I believe it is, and if Earth is quite alive the way I'm feeling more and more that it is,
Mm.
then there have to be continual exchanges of information between plants and animals. I think we're the ones that have been left out. I think we forgot.
Yeah, and I wonder why that is. And I wonder if at one point in time we had that kind of psychic communication and it was just a normal thing.
Oh, I've met people who have not forgotten, who live differently than many of us. Yes. So, for example, I met a man named George in Belize, which is an island here off of the in the Caribbean waters. And George grew up spending a lot of time alone in the forests of Belize. And he would go in with his dog. And the way he talked about his sense of even jaguars and the birds and the plant life, he talked about it as if it was all alive and he could feel it. He could sense the pulsation of life and understand what was going on. I think there probably are people who live in a way that they've stayed connected or they have it naturally. Maybe there's something they've brought into this life that they have. I suspect, in part, that as wonderful as our tools and technologies have been to help us in the quality of our lives, that they can be distracting away from awareness of our connection to the earth and to other creatures. That's my suspicion. That's my hunch.
Yeah, I know. I would agree with you as well. And thoughts in my head right now are, well, do you think at Petsev, for example, you maybe include horses here as well? They're here to heal us as well.
Oh, there's so many stories about particularly dogs healing and being aware of. So, I mean, we know that dogs can smell cancer, for example, but oh, with people who have post-traumatic disorder and stress disorder and are in the company of animals, or elderly folks who are alone and in the company of animals, there are certainly studies that suggest people heal fuller and more quickly when they have animal companionship. Now, whether or not that is their sole purpose, I can only say what I've heard from horses, but perhaps because we've domesticated dogs, I don't think wild dogs would be as helpful, but because we've domesticated them and they've grown with us, we've even bred them genetically to have characteristics that we want for our own purposes. And we're all pretty close. We're all living in pretty close connection. Maybe it's their natural inclination just to support us that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
surely, have you had an animal in your life?
Oh, cats mainly, yeah.
Oh, well, they're different.
They are.
What amazing creatures. Yeah, I think they have a very different purpose in our lives. Pretty powerful, but different.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at the pharaohs and stuff, man, how they used to worship them, and no, and it always seems to be with a cat, it takes charge of the dog as well. So, but I'm not, not too long. I will get a dog. That is the plan. But I've never ridden a horse. I mean, there is a connection there, isn't there?
Um, well, I'm okay to get on a horse, but I'm actually happier just standing next to one and putting my arms around its neck and snuggling up, talking. So we've ridden horses because we've needed to. They were our transportation for a long time, right? They
Oh,
took us into war and they plowed our fields. They were our laborers. Um, so we've had a long-standing relationship with them, using them almost as our tools. Um, I think that what I'm hearing is that the horses are asking for a different kind of relationship now, and they're asking to be heard and understood differently, so that their purpose can be fulfilled, which is much greater and much deeper than simply being there to serve our physical needs. Hmm. Did I answer your question?
oh yes, no,
Mm.
absolutely. And uh, I suppose there's been a lot of healing on your side as well through the horses, because you know, there's been a lot of shifts in your life, put it that way.
That's
And
that.
there was one when you went to Costa Rica, and that horse helped you deal with that particular shift as well. And I think he was going through a divorce at the time.
I was. It was very painful. And just, I think for me, and probably this is true for many people, we want to feel a sense of control of our lives, yes? And we want to feel a sense of control of the events of our lives. And sometimes life just won't let you do that, you know? We might be able to decide we're going to get up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, but not always, you know? But there's certain things they're just out of our control, or we need help with them. And so I had two things going on. I wanted to know that I could just do the right thing, work really hard, be responsible, be honest, and know that everything would be fine and that my life would be comfortable. And despite all of my best efforts to be the best person I knew how to be, I had got a son who got very sick with a mental illness. I
That's
had
right.
a daughter who died. I had a marriage end. I felt really helpless, overwhelmed, and confused about sort of what am I supposed to do? How do I make life work? And what this horse helped me to realize is you really actually just have to let go of a lot. And you have to realize there's a lot that you cannot be in control of. So you have to allow the control to be where it rightly belongs. So we have to figure out for ourselves what is our source, what is the
Mm,
source of our strength and support. But that horse taught me to let go and to trust him to take care of me. And I'm the kind of person who was pretty much feeling like I'll be in control and I'll take care of myself.
yeah.
It wasn't working. And in letting go and releasing and trusting that horse to take care of me on a very difficult trek that scared me terribly, it was cathartic.
Yeah.
And the release went very deep. And it feels a lot better to be in this skin without a sense of being in control, instead of just being open and being aware.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a child. Um, did the, I mean, yeah, did spirituality at that time make any sense of that? It could make sense of the situation in any sense.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I always turn to that. But it doesn't mean it's not painful, and it doesn't mean
No.
it's not really scary and really hard. Um, with my daughter, she was an infant. Actually, I knew that she was going to die because it came to me in a dream that something was very wrong just about 2 weeks before she was due to be born. So I went to my doctor and told him about the dream, and he said, "Oh, don't worry." And I said, "No, I trust these dreams. This is a message." And it turns out, yeah, she had a fatal disorder. She had no brain, actually. So she died pretty quickly after birth. Um, but I sensed that partly what happened is that she'd come to teach me compassion.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that her life was a sacrifice for me. I'm saying that part of her purpose in birth was to help me with compassion. I got it in a big way after she died.
Mm, yeah.
And so that's the spiritual side, was accepting that there was something I needed to learn, some way I needed to grow. I could be sad, and I could even be angry with the universe, but ultimately I had to ask, what am I to learn? Um,
What it seems to me as well is that the horses have taught you to be very centered.
yeah, they've taught me to be in my body and to be on the earth and to be very present. And in addition, the biggest thing is horses have huge hearts relative to human beings. They pump a lot more blood than we do relative to the brain and the size of their bodies. So in other words, what I'm trying to say to you is they are heart-centered beings. And in our modern age, we've become much, much more brain-centered beings. Would you agree with that? humans?
Well, I would do, yeah. I mean, you
Yeah,
just got to look
yeah.
around you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it shows up in all kinds of ways in our
Mm,
economics and our politics and the way we treat the earth. And
yeah.
so, what the horses are teaching me is that actually, this organ that we consider just something that keeps blood pumping is actually doing a whole lot more than that. It is talking to me more and more, it is guiding me, it is centering me, and it's opening me to be able to hear and sense. And they are helping me very much with that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, would you say a horse is very centered in a sense as well?
Yes, unless they've been broken by a person,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless they've been emotionally beaten down by a person or abused or neglected. And then they're not so centered, and then they can misbehave, they can be depressed, they can self-mutilate, they can be very disturbed. But a horse that's been well cared for and well respected and loved is incredibly centered in their heart.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, we're just going to take a short break here, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained. The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined by my guest, Rosalind Byrne, author of the book When the Horses Whisper. Now, Rosalind, consciousness in a horse, is one of their purposes of incarnating, in a sense, to evolve their spiritual consciousness?
Oh, that's what Beauty tells me, the horse named Beauty, very clearly, uh, to evolve their spiritual consciousness in partnership with us. Hmm. Yes.
So again, healing when they've gone through some terrible things, for example, what would be the purpose for a horse to go through an abusive situation, would you say?
Oh, so why not? Why wouldn't it be the same as for us? Yes, to grow, to learn, but also, do you know what I think? I think to teach us. So, um, there's a story in When the Horses Whisper about a horse named Coreto and his person whose name is Juan Jose. They live in Costa Rica. Coreto was very much celebrated for being sort of a genetic stock that was outstanding. And he was a hardworking, wonderful horse. And then he got quite sick. And he got very thin, and I don't like to call them owners, but let's just say his person decided to shoot him. And that person took a gun and put it to Correto's head to kill him. And Juan Jose completely lost it and said, "No, no, no, stop, stop! You cannot kill that horse." And the owner said, "Well, I can't. He's worthless to me now. He's worthless." So Juan Jose didn't have the money to purchase him, so they made an agreement that Juan Jose would continue to labor for this man in exchange for earning his right to Corretto. When I met Corretto, he was pretty sickly still, but Juan Jose had committed to take care of him and to get him well. What became really apparent, and what Corretto ultimately told me, is that his sickness was a mirror of Juan Jose's own inner sickness, and that as Juan Jose worked to heal Corretto, he himself was being healed in the process. And that they, on a soul level, had journeyed here together because of lessons that they both needed to learn and that they were teaching one another. So Corretto's suffering and near death very much was a part of Juan Jose's suffering and return to a sense of himself. It was an amazingly beautiful relationship to watch evolve. Corretto is now thriving and quite healthy, is
Mm.
having babies, and Juan Jose is doing beautifully as a masterful horse trainer and caregiver. So, it's a long story to answer your question. Corretto's suffering, he told me very specifically, was because that's the way that Juan Jose would be reached so that he could grow as a person
Yeah, it's
and
kind of like
more.
well, it's what you just said there, and it's kind of like they were mirroring each other's issues in a sense.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Incredible,
Mm.
incredible. So, th- the soul progression of a horse. Do you think in future lives that it can progress to incarnate as a human? Would you say is that possible?
Oh, it's interesting. One horse said to me, "I know that I'm a horse, and this is what I want to be. And I am not interested in being anything else other than a horse. This is who I am." I actually believe that I have now met people who have experienced the equine life. Um, I don't know that I've yet met a horse who's experienced the human life. I do believe that I've met a horse who is what we would consider on a human level a spiritual master, a very wise, wise being.
Wow,
Mm.
wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and you must have learned some stuff from him.
Yeah, actually, I'm actually still referring to Beauty, the one who came
Oh,
to me in a
sorry.
dream.
Yes, Beauty. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, she's a
yeah,
very special soul.
yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
and yes, I mean, I suppose I was going to ask there as well. I mean, do they are they? Could we even possibly guess how many past lives, if they're, if horses do have past lives that they've had? But I mean, it seems to be, a never-ending circle of progression, doesn't it? Where we keep coming back, for various
Depending
reasons.
for various reasons. Hmm, I think that in her case, it's possible that she chose to incarnate, but didn't have to. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That there are some souls that are not back because we're still trying to get off the wheel of karma and we're still learning. There are some that come to help. That's one horse I've met who I think is here for that purpose, who may not had to have incarnated at all, who maybe is from a realm of souls that, or what I don't, beings that do not incarnate because of what they are. I'm not sure, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm
No,
still learning.
no, no. I mean,
But that is my sense about that one.
yeah.
Um, there's also a stallion I've been communicating with, who's really astutely aware of people. This is a horse who said to me that when he meets um, riders, visitors who come to ride, most of whom, but not all of whom, are American, that his experience of them is as if they are geldings, meaning castrated males, because they have lost their sense of the masculine energy and no longer know what to do with it. He's going to be helping with this next book because that's a very profoundly deep message. What he's saying is that that the feminine has to have the masculine, that it is energized by the presence and support of the masculine, and that is in part the job of the masculine energy is to support the feminine energy. Now, we're not talking about male female precisely. We're talking about people who choose to run one or the other. So it can go in different ways. Yes, do you see what I'm saying? So a male could decide to run the feminine energy, but essentially what he's saying, this horse is saying, is that he's not experiencing male humans who remember and know what it means to hold the masculine energy.
Hmm.
And I think that that may, in some ways, point towards the complex relationships that we're having and the confusion over what it means to be in relationship in terms of the responsibilities of each other to energetically support the creative process. So as I say, I'm still learning. I'm open. I'm being asked to listen because I think that there are things that need to be shared and understood.
Well, connecting with our own pets, then, for example. And if we just try to apply the principles that you've used for connecting to horses, and for people who may want to connect to the horse as well, of course, where does it first start? Is meditation a good point? I mean, do we need to be near our pets, or is it just all through going within, in a sense?
Oh, I think it's a combination of listening, being present-minded, and being open. So I think there are ways that we can all learn to hear the voices of other species. I think that part of it starts with just being present without judging, yeah, without judging either ourselves or the being that we're with, and letting that creature, whether it's our cat or our dog or whatever, I don't know about fish, but um, certainly the ones with higher order capacities, letting them know that we are willing to listen and just creating the time and space and sitting and listening. I think that the voice, the volume will go up over time. Now, I've been meditating since I was quite young. It could be that that's been helpful because I do now have the training to know how to quiet my mind. Um, and that helps when you're going to listen. But we also have to get out of our own way, right? In order to really deeply listen, whether it's to an animal or to another human being, we have to get out of the way and really open and want to hear.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, and just to quiet the mind as well. And
Yes.
I'd love to get you back on when you're closer to finishing your new book as well, because I didn't want to sort of scale off and not emphasize how important that message was about the balance in energies as well, because I've had people on discussing that side of things,
Oh, have
and
you?
yeah, and yeah, yeah, and if we only came from the point of reference sometimes that we are all equal, um, we are all one,
Yes.
there'd be sharing, there'd be caring, there'd be
Yes.
unconditional love, and we'd come from a different space.
Yeah, it'd
So,
be
so
amazing.
yeah, so I will get you back on for that definitely to see where your work's taking you because it's going to be fascinating.
It will be. Not sure where it's going, but I'm really curious.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, are you getting letters from people all over the place in the sense to, wanting help with their horses that are coming to you?
I am, and I'm going out and visiting people on their horses when I'm able, and it's incredible. Now, almost every single time I've gone out to a facility to meet someone and their horses, the human ends up in tears, and I think it's because of that heart connection that heart gets touched when they hear and realize how much the horse is aware of. It touches them very deeply. So what I see happening in part is people are getting information they need to do a better job with their horses or to make sure their horses' needs are met, but they're also getting some healing that comes from the awareness that this creature actually sees them, understands them, and cares about them.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
you must have some fascinating. I mean, we barely got through any stories really of, evidential based stories, and I know
Mm.
you've got a lot of them. I mean, we've touched on a few, but is there any one that really stands out that you could just briefly describe to us?
Oh, evidential based? Sure. There was a horse named Amarillo, and he was sick, and the vet didn't know what was wrong. He was losing a lot of weight and he was chewing on non-nutritive substances like wood posts. So when I met him, I asked him, "Do you know what's wrong with you? They're very concerned about you and you're not at all well. Do you have any idea of what's going on?" And he did. He said, "Yes, I know exactly what's going on." And he showed me an image of a pus-filled sac buried deep underneath of his jaw, really deep underneath of his jaw. So I told them, and they weren't sure what I was talking about, but 3 weeks later, an abscess burst, and there it was, deep underneath of his jaw, and it had to be surgically removed. So here's sort of an evidential story about how a horse is aware, and was able to communicate it, and it made a huge difference in his wellness.
Yeah, I see. You can't, and I mean, it must shock people sometimes, like you've said before, when this information comes through, and it turns out to be absolutely right as well. And it must be a great comfort to yourself knowing that you can trust that information, because that's half the battle or more.
Oh, it's huge. I'm learning to trust. Um, and sometimes I have questioned myself, like, what am I doing? What kind of, is this some kind of charade? What's going on with me? But then I have to get my mind to stop that, stop the judgment, stop the ego fear, quiet down, meditate, release, and then put it out there. I am here to serve these horses as best as I can. And then it's okay. Then something happens and it's confirmed by the horse's person, and I think, okay, I'll keep going then.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, to sum up your book then, I mean, you may have said it already, but what would you say is the most important message of the book?
Oh, that animals are sentient and aware and quite aware of us and what's going on with us. And if we can really start to open and listen, I think that that we're in store for amazing experiences with each other and with our animals.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, how can people get hold of your book as well, and your website?
Yeah, well, Amazon.com. I think there's an Amazon UK, BarnesandNoble.com. They can also go to whenthehorseswhisper.com, or just my name, RosalindByrne.com. And if they go to RosalindByrne.com, sign up for the free newsletter, and I send that out maybe every couple months with lots of stories about interspecies communication and what's going on and what I'm learning, and I'd love to be able to share that with people.
Okay, well, Rosalind Byrne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on your show, Kevin.
Well, we've come to an end on today's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on themoreshow.co.uk. And do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.